Okay, so record and we're live. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to Give Back Yoga University. My name is Chelsea Roff, and I'm here with an old friend, Mallika Chopra. I'll tell you a little bit about her, and she'll also introduce herself during this interview. Our topic today is the power of intent, and it's very special for me to talk to Mallika about this particular topic because many years ago, perhaps without her even knowing it, Mallika kind of passed on this teaching to me, and it's gone on to impact my entire life. So it feels very poignant and very touching to be here today with Mallika talking about that teaching, talking about how it's informed her life and her work. We can also share a little bit about how it's informed mine as well. I thought that might be a good place to start. And then we're going to go way back into Mallika's childhood. And I want to hear a little bit about where that teaching came from her. And then we might even get into how that teaching might inform your own life, whether you're a yoga teacher or a healthcare professional, or you're just somebody here that's interested in this topic of intention. I tend to ramble on a lot. So I'd written up a little description of how Mallika and I met, and I thought I'd just read a few words from there so you all can know where we're coming to this conversation from. I said, my life collided with Mallika's work back in 2012. So it's 2021 now, so almost a decade. I was sitting at a friend's kitchen table searching for jobs, and I stumbled on a listing for science editor. I think it was science editor, it was some sort of editor. And I asked my friend, his name's Tommy Rosen, and he's well connected in the yoga world. I said, Tommy, have you ever heard of this company Intent? And Tommy Rosen immediately, he goes, oh yes, I know that company. He said, that's Mallika's company. So Tommy picked up the phone and he called Mallika, and this is to my memory. I remember hearing him put in a recommendation that did not at all, I did not feel worthy of. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying all those things. And essentially got me in an interview. I was fresh out of university, so I didn't have loads of experience. I did have experience with editing. I did have a passion for science and for health. So it felt just like a perfect fit. And I got the job, which was wonderful. It was a really, really wonderful opportunity. This is probably the important part. Working for Mallika at Intent, I feel like I found my voice. Mallika encouraged me to bring the fullness of my life and my experience to my work, to focus on topics I was passionate about, to be honest and direct in feedback with our writers, and to believe in myself enough to even publish my own writing. It was such a transformative time. I got to edit the work of wildly successful people, from scientists to spiritual leaders to best-selling authors. And I also got to witness firsthand what was possible when you bring together powerful people in science, healthcare, government, and social impact to achieve a shared vision. Mallika, and I'm sorry to keep going, bring it back to you because I can imagine it might feel uncomfortable to have all of this. But Mallika, I also felt like you encouraged me to focus on my intent, to think about what I wanted to bring to the world, and to make decisions from that place. I ended up publishing an article, and it took off. And the short story is, it essentially was the seed for what became a nonprofit organization that still operates under the Give Back Yoga Foundation, which is where this platform lives. So I feel like I learned firsthand how powerful that idea can be, that teaching of getting clear on your intention and then having the courage to act from it and to make decisions from it can be. So one, thank you for that. It definitely influenced my life. And I wanted to turn the tables and ask you, Mallika, how did that teaching come into your life? Where did you first learn that? And we can talk a little bit about what intention means as well.
Absolutely. So it's an honor, Chelsea, to be chatting with you today and reflecting on our relationship. It's very fulfilling for me. It's very moving for me, and I'm very proud of you. I'm obviously older than Chelsea, and I have kids who are now 18 and 16. And I think over the years, the most fulfilling thing for me has been the ability to mentor others. It's like the natural mothering instinct, I think, that I have. And I think, Chelsea, when you came to Intent, you were young, you were vulnerable, but it was really clear that one, you were incredibly intelligent, incredibly driven, and also searching. Like, you were going through your own journey of healing. And so it was a very special time to watch you blossom. And then also, as you said, plant a seed, having no idea what that seed's going to become, right? So 10 years later, we can look back and say, wow, that seed blossomed into very important, very impactful, research-based work that's really being done at a community level. So it's something that I'm so proud of you, truly so proud of you. Um, and I guess that, it's an example of how each one of us can be that one pebble that's thrown into a pond and then has this ripple effect.
Mm.
And so for me personally, that is shaped by my background and how I grew up. So many people know my father, Deepak Chopra. We were a close immigrant family that grew up in Boston. My parents came to the US with $8 in their pocket, and my they didn't have money to have me when I was born, because they didn't have health insurance. And so my mom went back to India to have me, and my dad worked 24/7. And over the years, he navigated towards exploring the mind body connection, talking about Ayurveda, going back to wisdom traditions of meditation and yoga and these practices. And when he started talking about this, he was the witch doctor who was selling snake oil. So we grew up in the context of him being attacked all the time.
Mm.
And I think the lesson that we learned, and you said this in the beginning, is, being honest and authentic about what you believe in, and then finding the ways to package it in a way to take it to a larger audience. And so I think that's what I learned very much from my father. Also, though, this concept of intention, because when you're doing something, anything in life, but particularly when you're doing something new, it involves a lot of intuition, as you mentioned, trusting your gut, being authentic, being strong. And it really starts with this idea of intention. So an intent is like a seed, which you mentioned as well, a seed that you plant in the ground, and then, the dirt, the sun, the rains, everything comes to nurture it, and we don't know the beautiful flower or tree it's going to blossom into. And in our wisdom traditions of Vedas of India, there is a saying that says, you are your deepest desire.
Mm.
As is your desire, so is your intent.
Mm.
As is your intent, so is your will. As is your will, so is your deed. And as is your deed, so is your destiny. And it really begins with the seed, the deepest desire. So, one of the things that I hope I do in my life, in my children's life, and those that around me are constantly asking people to think about, who am I? What do I want? How can I serve? And then what am I grateful for? So that really is the seed that my dad, my mom planted in us. But hopefully that then just blossomed out, like I said, into this ripple effect. And we never know how we're going to affect others, actually. In your case, though, I would say I knew that you were going to do great things. So I'm so excited just to next year.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting too because I don't think I realized at the time that I was receiving that teaching so regularly. But it was part of the company you built, you know. Um, yeah, it's this is a real delight to talk to you right now. I'm just sort of sitting in a lot of gratitude around it. But I don't think if you had told me at the time mentally that, you know, you set an intention and that's going to have, I would have been so skeptical and probably I would have been like, oh, that's just, you know, new age mumbo jumbo. And it's occurring to me now, I'm thinking about like what somebody who might have had the frame of mind I did back then might be thinking is there's a lot of stuff that gets put out these days, kind of watered down spirituality around, you know, manifesting, you know, so if you attract what you want and all of that. And it sounds to me, and I also experience that intent and intention is something much deeper than that. um, so that might be a very difficult question to ask, but I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit. You know, what's the difference between this, I want something, and if I say I want it, I'm going to bring it to me, versus an intent or an intention, which is, you know, I think something different.
Absolutely. It is something different. So it's not this law of manifestation or attraction. And I say, you know, I want something. When we were young, a phrase that my father would say to us, and I say this in the context of also recognizing that the phrase itself has a context of privilege around it. But it says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience and set the goals I will achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, we know many, especially children and people, are in social contexts where there are systems that are oppressing them. But what I take away from this phrase is when we were young, my dad would ask us, what do you ask for? And we'd ask for the Atari games and clothes and tickets to the Celtics and the material things. And then he would guide us to ask for love, connection, inspiration, a sense of purpose. And so it was asking for the qualities in our life that made us feel happier, healthier, more connected, and of purpose. Now, intents come from the soul. They're very different from goals that come from the mind. And so it's not an easy process. I mean, you know from your own experience, and we all know, the subtitle of my book for adults is My Somewhat Messy Journey to Purpose, Peace, and Joy, that it's messy, you know, and nothing really comes, the life journey is messy. It is about the highs and lows and the emotions and the richness of life, which is not always happy. So this isn't just about being positive or asking for material things. In Intent, Living with Intent, my book, I outline a path to intent, which we can get into more, but it's kind of the process that I struggled with and discovered over time, which of course is something that I can share, which is around the acronym INTENT. So I is for incubate, N is for notice, T is for trust, E is for express, something that we did on intent.com, N is for nurture, and then T is for take action. And so we can get more into that, but in essence, it shows that it's a process and it's a constant tapping into asking questions, figuring things out, pivot points in life, having flexibility to change. And it's more about the process of living with intent. It is not about manifestation or saying, I want this material thing and coming. Again, we don't kind of subscribe to that dialogue at all.
Yeah, it's so I'm thinking of the song that keeps coming to mind is you can't you can't always get what you want, but you get obliterating the lyrics. But that was yeah, when we talk about it, I think it felt different because in my experience, I actually resisted that intent so hard for a while, you know, like my soul or my heart or something in me was speaking with a very soft voice of this is where I want to express, this is where I want to go. And I was like, no, I'll do academia. No, I'll be an editor. No, I'll do all these other things. So it is really different because part of it is getting like clearing the mind stuff out a little bit and clearing some of the social conditioning out a little bit of this is what it means to be successful, or this is the path I'm supposed to go on, or this is what my parents want me to do. Yeah, and then it can be Oh, it can be such a messy process that, you fall on your face and you go, was this really what I wanted, to begin with? Or you get bored with it. Mallika, I wonder, and I wasn't actually intending to go here, but I'm really curious about it because um, I've not talked to you about it. But what's been your experience with that messy process? Because I'm thinking specifically of you're very, very successful as an author, as an entrepreneur. You've taken those teachings and you've built companies and you've closed companies, you've written books, you've changed roles, you've balanced family life. Can you talk through some examples of how that messy stuff has shown up in your own life?
Absolutely. So it is messy, and that's one of the things I like to share with people, because I think for many people they have this perception of maybe me or my family because of my dad's public image. um, and now I am going to turn 50 this year, which is amazing. Yeah. And I can actually look at my life a little bit in decades, which is kind of an amazing process. And that is what you realize, I think, as you are able to reflect on life. And I'm a big person on self-reflection, so I do reflect often. In my 20s, I was most excited about having a cool job and being, out there. And so I often share my experience at MTV. I got this incredible job to launch MTV in India, and I was
Wow.
working with, bands like No Doubt to create videos in the streets of Bombay. I met my husband at a rave. I could go to any disc club I wanted to. And it was just this incredible life at 23, 24. And I remember that for me was one of my first pivot points, where driving in a car with my coworkers after a huge success in business, we found ourselves stuck in a slum, watching a group of kids, the poorest of the poor, watching something on a roadside stall. And as we approached it, we saw that there was a television hanging by wires with images coming in and out. And there was the MTV logo. It had reached every corner of the planet. And everybody in my car began to cheer, and my heart stopped.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? I had grown up in this context of asking, how can I serve? And I realized I had the most amazing job, actually, but I wasn't serving in the way that I was meant to serve. And so that was like that first point in my mid 20s where I kind of paused and I thought, okay, I'm not on the path I want to be on. So I left that job without knowing at all what I was going to do next. I ended up getting married, going to business school, which I basically went to business school because I didn't know what else I should do. My husband and I moved back here. And yes, my journeys had many companies, but the second pivot point for me came when I was 5 months pregnant on 9/11. We thought that my brother was on one of the planes, and we had, a few hours of complete anxiety that ended up with me just, luckily he was fine. But it was a day that defined so many people's lives. For me, it ended that day with me in the hospital monitoring my baby because I had fainted while going for a walk just from the anxiety and stress. And I remember being in the hospital room and hearing Tara's heartbeat and thinking, oh my God, like suddenly all the excitement and love and magic of becoming a parent became real fear and anxiety and stress.
Mm.
And so that was another pivot point where I was like, oh my God, what does this journey that I'm about to embark on as a mom mean to me? And what are the intents that come with that? And that was my first book, 100 Promises to My Baby, which are basically intentions as a mom.
Mm.
And then the next pivot point came maybe 10 years later. Probably, yeah, it was while we had intent, where I was realizing that I was in this, here I was teaching people about meditation and intention and well-being and good luck, how to feel healthy in life. And I was completely unhealthy. I was addicted to sugar. I wasn't moving. I was overwhelmed. I wasn't sleeping. And so that became another pivot point where I decided, okay, this is now time for self-care.
Mm.
So life is messy, and it's not, and like you said, it's not easy.
Mm,
And there are points that we realize that we're not happy, that we're not connected, that we're not healthy. And often we have no idea what we're supposed to do, or we can't change things, meaning we need our job, and we need an income, or we're in a relationship that is more difficult to kind of adjust or get out of, or we've become a parent and now we're responsible in a different way. So it is about kind of going back to asking ourselves, what is it that I want, but also recognizing that it is planting the seed, and the seed sometimes takes time to find its way uh, into how to blossom. And so it's really about kind of tweaking, adjusting, but constantly coming back. And for me, the way that that has been meaningful has been actually focused more on this question of how can I serve?
mm,
Because again, I recognize that for me, I have the privilege, the voice, um, to be able to share these. So if I can serve in an authentic way, then for me, that's my way of feeling like I'm living more of purpose,
mm,
and feeling more just happier in
mm.
general.
Well, it sounds like your intent right now is to be of service. I was about to ask you what's the relationship between service and intent, but I'm like, well, it sounds like at this time in your life that is the intent, is how can I be of service to my children and to my family and to the world that's got so much going on, and so many challenges that need our help. Um, my next question, Malika, is around that. I can imagine there will be people listening, and I know I've had these times in my own life where it does feel really messy, and you are in the thick of it, and you're going, "This is not working," or "I've lost like that original intent was planted and it's become something, and it's not. My life doesn't feel as in alignment." Um, I hear the idea, coming back to that question and contemplation in yourself, and then giving it time to grow and nurture. But are there any practices or any ideas that you would suggest to somebody that might be really in the thick of it, resonating with this a lot and going, okay, how? What do I do?
Yes. So whenever you feel overwhelmed like that, and I think in the pandemic, that has for some people been even more pressing, is
Mm,
going back to practice,
mm,
going back to breath, breathing, shifting from the fight flight response to more intentional responses.
mm,
It's yoga practice, like you share and teach people, and especially with the work you're doing, people who are often suffering. And so we know that from practice, from giving space, from stimulating physical
mm,
things as well, that has effect. I, of course, am a meditator,
mm,
and I'm a very irregular meditator. So there are times in my life, decades or a decade, where I didn't meditate at all. And then I rediscovered the practice. So for me, it is about like trying to have a regular practice, but we all get off the beaten path, coming back to that practice, and really physically, emotionally, and spiritually having a connection again.
mm,
And then it's from that place where we're honest. So, I also want to, you were part of intent. And sometimes, I intent the company, and sometimes you have this vision and this dream of something. And you know what? Intent served while it was meant to serve, but then there was a time to let go.
mm,
And I think I shared this with you when we spoke last week, is that, I probably took a few extra years before I was willing to let it go, but then it was really clear I needed to let it go. And in letting it go came more opportunity that I never knew would have existed had I not let it go. So it also is, uh, sometimes we may have an intention, but we get really wrapped up into the ego side of it, which I would say, for me has definitely manifested in my companies, in my books, and things like that. And so there is this whole process of the egoic intents versus the non-egoic intents, which I talk a lot about in my book and my I've conversation with Eckhart Tolle. I did a TEDx talk on it, to really also be honest and authentic about why you're doing what you're doing, and then also when it's time to let go.
Mm. Yeah, it's occurring to me, those are all skills that we build in our practice, whether it's meditation or yoga, that practice of seeing the mind get active and, thoughts coming, wants, desires, aversion, attraction, all of that, kind of seeing it and also developing an ability to observe it. I think my practice these days is very much meditation, and it's also bringing that meditation into work, into how I do, into relationships, into how I do everything, and going, oh, what's really going on here? Is this that deep-seated knowing in you, or is it the clinging or the aversion or the anxious part? But yeah, you're right. It's sometimes practice can feel very disconnected from the rest of our lives. We do 10 minutes of meditation and then this is life over here. But that idea of making your work a practice, making your life a practice resonates a lot. Um, okay, good. This is all good stuff. I'm like, there's so many places to go. Where to go next? I think where I want to go next, Mallika, is talk about your life now and your work now. You've got when I was living in California and working for Intent, you had two little girls who were very young. You've got one in college right now, so motherhood has evolved for you. You've also published a series of books recently, and you've done exactly that. You've let go of a company that you built for years that absolutely served its purpose. I can say firsthand. I mean, not that I was the only purpose, but was so valuable in, I think, elevating and amplifying important conversations in this space, and teaching people like me the power of intent. So yeah, I wonder in that letting go, how has your life evolved? What does your work look like now? How is intent showing up in all of those places now?
Yeah, so when I started Intent, I got a whole bunch of investors, very fancy people who supported us. And but there was one investor, Sue Smalley, um, who is a well-known scientist at UCLA. And I remember when we had our first meeting to discuss investment, she was the only woman out of everyone who had invested in Intent. In our first meeting, she said, Mallika, I'm going to support you, but you're you're a mom, and so don't sacrifice what you need to do as a mom for this company. And she knew, she was able to read kind of my sense of like ultimately my service and my identity was as a mom. And I have to say that that always stayed with me. And it's something that as I've kind of mentored other women in this space, even, because many of these influencers are younger than me and kind of becoming moms now. And so, that's a very different balance. And I feel very grateful that she guided me in that way. So what it stress to me is that yes, I had a company or I have books or I'm on a speaking circuit, but when I ultimately really think about who I am, for me it is in the relationships that I'm engaged in. So whether it's my children, you remember Samantha, my husband, but as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend. So I think that's really what's driven me. So I feel like everything else has come and gone because I've really anchored myself in relationships. So as my kids have grown older, what I realized is we were able to explore so many of the things that I learned as a kid as a family. So it began with just teaching my kids, meditation and breathing and movement. And of course, they roll their eyes and think we're crazy all the time. But what happened is that slowly, while I had intent and others, I started teaching their friends' parents or their friends, or we do like a Girl Scout, meeting on yoga, and then we do like a try a meditation, and all these like girls who were giggling and active and whatever. We'd find that one moment where everyone took a deep breath together and there was this sense of connection and peace. So over the years, what I saw is was the gift that I had got from my parents of these techniques and meditation, but more importantly, the idea of self-reflection.
Mm.
Again, going back to those questions of who am I, what do I want, how can I serve? Um, so I started just sharing them with my community. And I think what happened is over time, that manifested in living with intent. But then what I really saw was there was no resource for kids directly. And I know from my own experience as a 9-year-old discovering these practices. So I got this opportunity. Actually, someone reached out to me to ask if I'd be interested in doing a book for kids. And I was like, well, I'm not even sure. Then they were like, we have no idea what it is either. So I have these books that I'm genuinely really proud of. So Just Breathe, which is meditation, mindfulness, movement, and more. It's just the practices. Just Feel, which is on social and emotional knowing and all about feelings and emotions. And then this one, Just Be You, which just came out last week, which is on self-reflection. So asking questions, setting intentions, embracing your special self and your uniqueness. So I think these books, which have come out over the last 3-4 years now, in many ways capture so much of my childhood and are something that I feel they're done, and it's a series and I have no idea what I'm going to do next, but it's like that is something that I feel was a genuine offering that shares many of the practices that I learned as a kid, but then as a mom, shared with my kids and then their communities and then schools. And so it's a going back to the question of we don't just kind of dream of what we want to do. It's more how can we serve in over time. I feel like I've been lucky that I've been able to impact different people through the lessons I learned as
Oh,
well.
it's beautiful. Yeah, I was just thinking that intent first is a seed we plant within us, but then it interfaces with the world. So, that's something that your parents and family gave to you, but then you nourished and it grew within you, and then you gave to your kids and then to their communities. And then it's all kinds of wisdom that comes out of that. It's beautiful. Very practical question. What age groups for those books? Is it for everybody? Are there particular age groups that it's good for?
So I wrote the books for 8 to 12-year-olds because I wanted it to be a tool for kids. So there are plenty of parenting books, meditation books, etc. But these books are the kind of books that when kids are, about like reading, or they're really illustrated with diverse children, which was very important to me. Um, it's the kids discovering the practices. So now I'm going a lot into schools pre-COVID, where I've been teaching kids these practices, and then they go home and they teach their parents. They'll say things like, "Mom, just breathe," or "Just stop, take 3 breaths." So the goal here was that. That being said, of course, I hear from so many teachers and parents, like they love the books because they'll do it with kids.
Yeah.
But my goal was really actually to give kids the tools directly, and then they can be the ones that are taking it out to their families and communities.
I love that. Who better to teach those practices than kids who haven't had layers and layers of conditioning put on them. I love that. That's really beautiful. I want to remind our group here that if you have any questions at all for Mallika, you can support me as an interviewer here and just drop your questions into the Q&A. Mallika, you've got two, and I'll keep an eye on Q&A. You've got two girls that are newly out of the nest. You've written these wonderful books that I think will be a service to kids, and it sounds like parents everywhere. Do you have any, and this is such a big question, I would hate to be asked this question myself, but do you have any inklings of what's next? You mentioned you're about to turn 50, you've got hopefully many decades left. How is that service intention evolving for you? What's coming
Yeah,
up?
no, it's a really interesting time in my life because, again, we know that age is just a construct, but at the same time, it feels like a major milestone, reaching 50, which is also in parallel with my elder daughter, Tara, just went off to college. So, so much of my life, work, days, energy has been focused on my children. Leela is going to be 17 in July, and she's now driving and has, her own personality and life, and we knew them as really babies. And so, and what's for me so fulfilling is obviously just in the way that I've watched you kind of blossom into your own individual. Like my girls are both very unique, incredibly compassionate, talented girls who are really into, they went to all girls schools, so they're very into women's empowerment and, feminine voice, and both have a lot of strength and wisdom. So Tara is when she was at school, she was very much a leader. Like she was president of her middle school, of her upper school, of her all school. Like she just played that role. That was how she expressed herself, and through music. And then Leela has become a gamer and is into esports and does taekwondo, is like a second degree black belt now in taekwondo. So they both kind of found their way and their path. And I think as parents, that's one thing that I feel we hopefully did right, is support our kids in their intentions, and also recognizing that those may change. So, Leela may be into gaming and esports today, but maybe next year she's into, who knows, history or English or whatever it may be. And Tara, just in the 2 months that she's been at college, there's just so much discovery that's taking place. So I answered this question purposely in the context of being a mom, because I think that continues, right? I'm going to keep watching my girls grow and expand, and others, my nephew now is going to be 13. So it's for us the joy of what this next generation is very fulfilling. For me personally, I I don't know. I recently did some more meditations for the Chopra app. So for families and kids, I have a younger children's picture book coming out this summer, which is called My Body is a Rainbow. And it's kind of bringing in the chakras and breath and affirmations. And I just signed on to do another kids book, like a younger kids book. So I'm lucky because I have opportunities, and these books have done really well. And I think they are unique in that we're addressing kids directly. um so I don't know. I mean, maybe there's another book in there somewhere. I haven't been on the speaking circuit, which I love because of COVID, but I'm doing a lot of these Zoom type of events, doing a lot of companies. Even it's so interesting because people come back into your life with intent. We did some work with Coke back in the day, Soak and Bicha, if you remember. And
Yeah.
some of those team people from that company have gone on to other companies. So, I've been speaking through those people to other places. So you just never know what happens. Um, yeah, I don't know. We'll
No, that's
see.
perfect.
Really open. It's
That's
really open.
perfect. Now, what I hear in that is, again, an intention to serve, but also, it's something I've thought about for some reason a lot this week, but an intention to serve, the next generation, not just your own kids, but we're all going to pass away, and permanence is real, but there will be a world here that lives on, that's passed on to generations in the future. So in all of that, I hear that sort of intent and an openness to how it flowers in the world. We have one question from a dear friend of mine, Rob, and I love this question. It's going to be a good one to end the interview on. I love this, Rob. What is a traditional dinner conversation when your entire family, including your parents and relatives, come together? What does that look like?
So we're lucky, as Chelsea may remember, we're a very close family. And I think what happened this last year with COVID, my father, so my parents live between New York and San Diego, but for this last year, he stopped traveling and he's been in San Diego full time with my mom. So usually my mom's very independent and my dad's kind of in and out. So they've actually been together for a year, which in and of itself has been fascinating for our whole family. But
Fascinating.
yeah,
Fascinating.
our pod has been my brother, who lives 10 minutes away, his wife and son. And then the four of us, because Tara college got delayed for her to go. So she only just went in January. And then my parents. And so I've seen more. Sorry, that's Yoda, my dog.
Who I've known for years.
Remember
Yoda.
Yoda?
Oh, hello, Yoda.
So our pod, we have spent more time as a family in the last year than I think we've ever spent, especially now with the grandkids and my husband and Candace, my sister-in-law. And so it's been really lovely, but we've seen my parents like literally every 2 to 3 weeks, which I'd never done, for the last 30 years, I think. And it's been fun. My dad remains just this bundle of crazy energy. I would say until November, every family conversation was about politics, and just and we were all very involved in the election, and that is something that I always like to stress, is that this whole new age asking for change, like, it requires work, and so for me it meant obsessively writing postcards and letters and making phone calls, and Tara did the same, and we got involved in some of the messaging. So I would say until November, probably in an unhealthy way, it was truly obsessive political dialogue. And then since November, I think we were able to kind of take a deep breath and reflect a bit. But I would say, the context of what's happening in the world and politically, not just in the US, but in the UK, in India, places that we feel a connection to, but even otherwise, that really is the context of which we have our family conversations. And then, so we're not really talking about, yoga or meditation at all. That being said, my dad remains absolutely obsessed with science and consciousness and spirituality, and where does that all come together. And so that would be the other, I would say, 10% of our conversation, and probably more so in the last few months.
Oh, interesting. That was a great question, Ralph. I wasn't expecting to get such a good answer. That's every family right now, right? Politics for sure, but also, yeah, we can't take our families out of the situations we're living in. Mallika, we are running out of time, but how you answered that question, I guess what's coming up for me, I'm just trusting what's coming up. But I want to thank you so much personally for, I could never have guessed when we collided what a powerful relationship that would be in my life. And it's, years go by and we may not be in contact very often, but it's continued to live in me in beautiful ways. And I would say, even to what you just said, looking at this year and what Give Back Yoga University is and the work that we're doing here, I think it's been an expression of what I saw you doing and what I saw your entire family embodying, which is how can we bring all these disparate pieces of society or civilization, from how we raise our kids in education, to healthcare, to politics and government leaders, to environment and all of that. How can we bring them all together? And then what can emerge when we, I don't know, this may be a reach, but come together with a shared intent. I can't believe I've tied that up that well. So that's not
So
how I
perfect.
intended to, but it does really come together well. So thank you personally for teaching me that. And thank you also for being so transparent and open in this conversation and allowing me to spread it out to others. And yeah, I hope it is.
Well, like I said, Chelsea, I am genuinely so proud of you, and always here to learn from you, and you know, to support you in whatever ways that we can. But you're doing incredible work, and someone that I can't wait to keep watching what happens over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Mallika. I hope we can have tea in person soon.
Yes.
I'm in California. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Mallika. And we'll see you all again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.